Hello, everybody. Welcome to another video from the RPA Vanguard channel. My name is Andy Menon. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to run background service automations with robot service accounts. So let's get started. So what I have here in front of me is a rough rendition of the relationship between the orchestrator and the robot machine in the context of modern folders. And this is how I try to remember it in my head. I want to talk about this a little bit before we get into the core of the subject of today's video. So on the right is the orchestrator. You have the tenant, and under the tenant, you have a modern folder. Now, in modern folders, you do not have the concept of robots and environments. Rather, everything is focused on the folder and the orchestrator user, right? So you have a user associated with the robot and a role, and you have that entire definition set up for the user as a whole. And because there is no concept of environments, what happens when the automation is run is that you have a runtime coming together along with the machine template, right? And within that machine template, you have the robot user definition and the process coming together, and the entire thing is executed at runtime. And once the process execution is completed or the automation completes execution, the whole thing is taken apart, right? So this whole thing is dynamic, unlike what you see with classic folders where the relationship between the user, the robot, the automation, the folder, and the environment were all tied together pretty closely. So in the concept of modern folders, everything is centralized around the user. And what happens is based on the kind of robot definitions associated with the user, the machine on the left, which is a robot machine or a VM, can run different kinds of automations, right? It can run foreground, background, or interactive automations, or as a whole, they could run attended or unattended automations. But everything happens because that account is associated with a user, right? So this is how sort of how the modern folder setup works. Now, I'm going to move to the next slide, and it's going to be a bit messy. And it is the same slide, but I have removed some of the things that are not applicable when it comes to the concept of robot service accounts. Okay, so here it is. This is the same slide that you saw previously, but I've removed a lot of stuff that is not applicable to the concept of robot accounts. So let's start from position number 1 here. One of the specialties of the robot account is that it is not associated with any user. Therefore, there is no username or there is no user email, right? Therefore, you only have the definition of a robot and a role, right? And that's why this user part has been scratched out. The other specialty of the robot service account is that you can run your automations on any connected machine, right? And because the robot account is not associated with any username, the mode of connection between the orchestrator and your robot machine or your robot VM is the machine key, right? And for the very same reason, the fact that the robot service account is not associated with any user, you can run predominantly unattended background automations from your robot machines. And that's why robot service accounts have been created, is you can run processes that are not associated with any user. This is unlike what you saw in the previous slide, where an attended or unattended automation is somehow tied to a user. What we are going to do in the subsequent part of this video is we're going to start from the left and create everything that we need to set up a robot service account, right? And then end up at position 4 here, where we'll be running an unattended background automation from a robot machine. So let me talk about what I'm going to be using to demonstrate the use of robot service accounts. What I have here is an orchestrator that I have logged in for one of the machines that I use on my home network. And that machine is meant only to run unattended automations. And for the convenience of recording this video, I've connected to the orchestrator, the automation cloud rather, for that machine from my laptop. But in actuality, when I work with that machine, the unattended machine, you can see I'm logged into it from the VNC viewer, right? So if I, bring this up, you can see that I'm connected to the orchestrator from the UiPath assistant on this machine. There is no studio on this machine. There is just the assistant and the robot in service mode. So therefore, anything that this machine is going to run, it's going to be unattended and/or unattended and background automations, right? So I'll be working from the browser there, but eventually we are going to come in here and just see how we can run background service automations. Right. So the first step, let's set up the robot service account. And we are going to be starting here at position 1. And I'm here in the automation cloud. Remember, you're not going to be setting up a robot service account like a regular user account because there is no association with a user. So to set up robot accounts, you go to admin, accounts and groups, robot accounts. Now I already have a robot service account, but I'm going to create one from scratch. There is a link here that says user versus robot account. I suggest that you click on this link and read the literature for user versus robot account to get a better understanding of what robot accounts are. So back to creating the robot account, I click robot account. So this time I'm going to say demo robot service. And then I'm going to give it automation user. Obviously, it has to have the ability to execute automations. And then add. I'm going to close it out for now. So I closed out that screen despite the fact that you saw this message, right? If you click on edit, you saw this message and it says you can further configure custom permissions. And you could go to the services page and use the manage access, right? But I'm not going to do that because hopping screens from one action item to the other is quite confusing. So I did not do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a straight path. And that is why I closed the screen as soon as I created this service account, right? So the next thing that we're going to do to manage access for this account here is we go to orchestrator and then tenant, manage access. To remember that account that we created is not listed here. And what we have to do now is click on assign roles and select robot account. And I'm going to say D, demo robot service. And then you have to select a role. And remember, folks, you have to read about the differences between an automation user and allowed to be automation user. The allowed to be automation user is used in conjunction with the automation user role. And you can read about the differences in these two roles. And when you compare them side by side, you will see the differences. But here it is required that at this tenant level, right, you have to allow this service account to be an automation user, right? So I click automation user and then I say next. Now we don't have to change anything here because, like I said, this is predominantly meant for an unattended robot. And one more specialty to keep in mind, you do not need any login credentials because, like I said, you can run background service automations on any connected machine. So therefore, this screen does not require much changes. And then if you want to make any changes based on, you're a robot, you could do those here, but I'm going to leave them at defaults and I'm going to say assign. And now you see, when we came to the screen a few minutes ago, the demo robot service was not visible here, but because you assigned it a role to allow it to be an automation user, you're able to see it here, right? So what we have done thus far is create this definition of the robot and the role. Okay, so the next step for us is to create the machine template. So here again, I'm still on the tenant level here. I'm going to go to machines. The reason why you would want to create a separate service machine template is that it allows a group of machines to work under a similar authentication model, right? So if you go look at any machine template definition, for example, here's one that I've created. If you go in here and you edit this template and you look at the machine details, right? It tells you that the purpose of a machine template is to allow multiple users to connect their robots and assistant to orchestrator using the same kind of authentication, right? Now, in this case, in case of robot accounts, we are going to be having a group of machines run background unattended automations. So I feel that for better organization, you can create a separate machine template for all of these machines. So I'm going to go back to machines and create a new machine template. So add machine template, and I'm going to say demo robot service machine template. And then you come down here, and here is where you are going to specify what kind of a process you want these machine templates to execute. Now, like I said, we are creating this machine template with a purpose, and that is to run background automations, right? So I'm going to select background only, right? And then you can go one step further and you can be very specific about which platform you would want this machine template to be compatible with. Now, in this case, I'm going to select all because it is possible that I may be including machines that are cross-platform and not just Windows. Once all of these attributes have been defined, I'm going to hit provision. Okay, so now we have set up the machine template, right? Remember to come back to this later because you will need the machine key. The next thing that we have to do is group the robot and the machine template under a modern folder, right? We'll create that next. So I'm here at the tenant level. So I'm going to go to folders. And then under folders, I'm going to add a new modern folder. And that's going to be demo modern folder. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to leave the feed at tenant package. If you want, you can create a dedicated feed to this folder, but for simplicity, I'm going to just leave it at tenant package feed, and I'm going to say create. That's good. So now we have the modern folder. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to add in the robot into this folder, right? The robot account that we created. So assign account group, and I'm going to click D. So we had permissions at the account level when we created the robot service account, where we set it to automation user. Then at the tenant level, we assigned the role allowed to be automation user. Now this is at the folder level. So I'm going to say automation user, right? And then I say assign. So we have assigned the robot account to this modern folder, right? Now, if I go back home, you will see a warning or an error here on the far right. Here you have two users. Obviously, one is the default admin, and the other is the robot service account, but you can see there's a warning. You cannot run unattended automations without a template, right? So coming back to this picture, we created the robot, the roles, then we created the template. We have the modern folder. We also set up the runtime, but now we have to associate the machine template with the modern folder. So I click on machines, and here I go to manage machines and folder. And what I do is I click on the demo service machine template that we just created, and I hit update. And here we have the modern folder, right? We have the robot service account, and we have the template all coming together in one place, right? So if I click on the home page of the demo modern folder, here you can see it is clean now. There are no errors. So far so good, right? We have created all of the pieces that we need on this side of the equation. Now what remains are one or two background service automations and also forming the connection between the robot machine and the orchestrator. We'll take a look at that next. So I'm in Studio, and I have a very simple automation here. You can see how simple this is. And that's because this is not just an unattended automation, but this is also an unattended background automation. That means that it does not have any pieces of front ends that are going to be automated. What this automation does, simply put, is generate a random item, right? If I click on this, it generates a random payload, which is a random double number, and then appends background process to it. And then what it does is it adds that item to a queue named paybill, which is in the shared folder, right? We'll take a look at the queue setup later, but so you can see that this is truly a background automation in the most simplistic sense, right? This is automation number one. So one of the things that you have observed with this automation is that it is so simple that it doesn't depend on anything from the host machine, right? It is simply generating a data on the fly, and it is posting that to a queue. It is not reading any data from the host machine, right? So the next automation I'm going to show you is a little bit different. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to open up that automation. I'm going to see you on the other side. Okay, so this is a slightly enhanced automation. It's a bit more complicated than the first one that I showed you. Here, what the automation does is it reads in a file that is present on the robot VM, right, or the robot machine. And it's a very simple file. For this demo, it is called bogus data, and it has a few unique IDs that this automation is going to read, right? It's going to read this file, and then what it's going to do is it's going to loop through each of these unique IDs in a data array, and then it's going to create a payload. And in this case, the payload will be a key that is found in the data array, right? And then it is going to prefix background process number 2, just to demonstrate the fact that this is the second service automation that is actually posting the data to the queue. And what I also have done here is that I have put in additional arguments where I'm going to give it the name of the parent folder of the queue. And also, I have another parameter here. What it does is if I set this parameter to no, or the argument to no, it is not going to post data to the queue because I don't want the queue to be crowded with unwanted entries. But if I set this to yes, what it does is it checks this flag. And if it is set to yes, it's going to add the data to the same queue named pay bill. But this time what I have done is I have parameterized the folder name. Now you can go one more step and also parameterize the name of the queue, right? That way what happens is you can deploy it anywhere and you can actually pass in the parent folder and also the queue name. Now what we'll be doing next is we'll be setting up the queues that are required for us in our demo folder. And then I've already published these as packages and they're available here in my packages folder. So the next step for us is to set up these queues. So I'm back here again in the orchestrator. There is this shared folder. If you observe, there is no personal workspace folder. That is because I have disabled the personal workspace folder because this instance or this tenant is meant only to run unattended automation. So I do not have personal workspace folders that are predominantly used for attended automation. So you do not see anything here. The only system folder that you're going to see is the shared folder. So under shared folder, I have created a queue, right? The name of that queue is pay bill. Now I'm not going to create separate queues within these two folders. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into our demo modern folder and I'm going to link the shared queue from the shared folder, right? So I'm going to say link from other folders and I'm going to hit pay bill, continue, link. And now if I go to the modern folder and look at queues, this pay bill queue has been linked. That's why you have this chain link icon here. And remember, this is why I parameterized the name of the queue parent folder because the parent folder of the queue is shared, not your modern folder. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be deploying those packages to the tenant feed here, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so I'm here in the at the tenant level in the packages feed. I have actually uploaded the packages here. You can see that there is dispatcher process number 2, and then there is the very plain and simple dispatcher process number 1. So what we'll be doing is setting up processes for these packages. So I'm going to go back into my VNC viewer and going to show you where the data file is deployed, right? And I'm going to bring this up. And if I go to folders, I have public documents and I have bogus data text file deployed here. Remember, the path to this file is also an input argument. So we can deploy this file anywhere and we can provide the path to this file to our process when we set it up, right? So keep this in mind. And in this case, if I open up this file has about 10 entries. And just to make things clear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in some definitive identifiers to make it clear that this data came in from the service machine, right? Okay, 4 records are enough, and I am going to remove the rest of them. So I'm going to save, I'm going to close. Right, now let's hop back to the orchestrator, and I'm going to go into demo modern folder, process, add process, package. We'll create the simple process first. So I'm going to select this package. And here We are going to give it a name, and then I say create. Remember, this simple process doesn't have any input arguments, so there isn't any extra step here. So I say create. That's good. Now I add another process and I select dispatcher 2. And as soon as I do that, I get these parameters that I have to actually, or arguments that I have to customize. So I'm going to edit this here, save. Next, I'm going to enable dispatch capabilities. So I'm going to set this to yes. That means that the file is going to be read and data is going to be dispatched to the queue. Save. And then I'm going to set up the queue parent folder. Remember, we are using a queue from the shared folder, so the parent folder name is shared. It's not your demo folder, right? So save. And I'm going to give it, and the process number is 2, and I'm going to say create. Good. Now we have all the pieces set together. So if we go back to our Scratchpad here, we have everything set up. We have the modern folder, the machine template, the processes, the robots, everything is set up. Now we focus on the left, which is a robot machine that is going to run these background processes. So one of the things that I had said when we created the machine template was that we'll be needing the machine key, right? So I'm going to bring this up, and here I am. I'm back to the automation cloud, but I'm operating inside of the VNC viewer, and I go to Orchestrator. I copy and I come back to UiPath Assistant. So I go to Preferences, and I'm going to bring up my URL. And wipe out this key, paste. So one of the things that I haven't found an answer to is I have to still sign in after I connect with the machine key. I do not know why that is, but I'm trying to find an answer. If I get an update, I'll put it up here. But in case after going through this video, if you find an answer, please do let me know, and please do let the community know. It's possible that this is something related to my setup, but if you have a better solution to this, please do let us know. But for the moment, if you look at this, I am connected, right? But it says I'm unlicensed, right? So I have to use the interactive sign-in, because if I hover on this beacon, it says use interactive login. So if I hit sign in, it's going to redirect me, and I say open. And here we are. I am now connected and licensed. And like I said, I have to first establish a connection using the machine key. And then I have to use interactive login for me to be licensed, right? But what you're seeing here are the two demo background automations that we deployed to our modern folder, right? So let's run these two automations one after the other. Remember, I'm not going to do any install. I'm not going to download them, nor am I going to run them from here, okay? I'm going to get out of the VNC viewer, and I'm going to come back to my local machine, and I'm going to work from here, right? I go into processes, and what I'll be doing is running the simple one first, right? So I have the demo simple process, and let's go look at the queue. If I go to the queue, I want to confirm that there are no items here. So if I go in and look at view transactions, it's empty. There's nothing in here, right? If I go to home, processes, and let me run the first simple demo. Remember, this is unattended, so I can start a job from the orchestrator. So I'm going to say start. And here's where everything that you have done comes together, right? We have the process here. Now you go to the account, and what we do is we select our service account, right? And then we select our template. Now I'm going to leave it at this because I want to show you that although I am running this automation from here, from my machine, my local laptop here, the automations are still going to run, right? So I'm not going to specify which machine. You can do it. If you drop down, you will see the name of the machine that we just connected from the VNC viewer that you saw earlier, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'll be doing is I'm going to hit start, and the command has been sent. So I'm going to go to jobs. The job is running and it has successfully run. So how do we clarify that it has run successfully? We go to the queue and we check for the transactions. And there it is. There's a new transaction item with priority normal. So I view details and it was posted a few seconds ago. Good. If I go to detail, you will see that it is background process with a random double number. So this proves that our background process is running with the help of a robot service account in a modern folder. So I'm back in the automations tab of my modern folder. And this time we are going to be running this automation here. Once again, we choose our service robot. We choose our service template. And we're going to hit start. And we go to jobs. And there it is. The job has completed. And if I go to my queue, and if I look at view transactions, earlier you saw one item being posted by the first service automation. I ran the second service automation off screen and I deleted these transactions. That way there is a separation between the first item that was posted by the first automation, and then these are the new items that you see have been posted by the second automation by consuming that file. And that file was sitting on the remote machine, right? So how do we prove that? We go in and take a look at the detail. And there it is. It says background process number 2, and you have AA and the unique ID. And if I inspect the last item posted, here it is, background process 2, the unique identifier or the unique attribute and the unique ID. This is how we set up robot accounts and then use these accounts to run unattended background automations from our service machines without having to associate the robot accounts with a specific user account in our orchestrator. So that is all for now. If you like the content of this video and if you learned something new, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.